Hundreds of people were expected to attend today's rally outside the State House, but the rain may have kept many who wanted to be there away. Nonetheless, what this demonstration lacked in numbers, it made up for in conviction.
So keep the movement going, keep the strength up, keep believing in the higher being, and we will be successful. Thank you.
The call was for drug treatment on demand, a demand that is steadily growing in Massachusetts, despite an increase in the number of drug treatment admissions in the past year. Almost every day in the state, there are more than 1,000 addicts seeking treatment to end their addiction who are turned away because there aren't enough publicly funded programs to treat them.
What we're up against is a class issue. It's just like Kitty can jump up and demand treatment and she can get it. What is the difference between Kitty and you? Well, there is a difference. Money is the difference. Who you are is the difference. The color of your skin is the difference. Your gender is the difference. Your sexual preference may be the difference. That is what it's all about, is to lock you out of what empowerment and what freedom means.
Yeah, I became discouraged.
37-year-old David Watson of Dorchester fortunately got into a treatment program recently and is recovering from 24 years of multiple.
Hey everybody, this is Jackie Luqman, and I am so glad to be with you tonight. Tonight is Monday, October 15th, 2018. I'm coming to you live from Washington, D.C. And as you can see, and I hope you can hear well because I don't want you to miss any part of this conversation. I am really, really honored that I get to see him every Sunday and a couple of times during the week, during the month. But I'm really honored that I get to talk to our pastor, Reverend Graylan Hagler, who is the senior pastor of our church, Plymouth Congregational United Church of Christ. Why am I talking to our pastor? I understand that in the progressive online circles, there's still a lot of reticence to people of faith. And we've told you very openly about our faith and how our faith fuels a lot of what we do. But I really wanted to talk to somebody who's been doing this a lot longer than we have and who has been involved in this fight from a faith perspective. Who can give you a much better, much deeper understanding of how the two fit together, faith and revolution, or particularly how revolution is fueled by faith. So the video you just saw was of a very young Reverend Hagler in Boston, Massachusetts, in speaking at a rally for drug treatment. In 1990, this is how long he's been doing this, and he's been doing this much longer than that. And I'm going to stop talking and let him talk to you. Reverend Hagler, thank you so much for being on our show tonight.
Thank you, Jacqueline, for being so kind.
So I think because we've got weird audio issues, you're going to have to speak up a little bit. But please tell us, how did you get involved in not just the faith work, but how did you get involved in the faith work and the social justice work?
Well, one is that if you really engage in the biblical tradition, the biblical word, you can't escape issues of justice and right treatment and fairness, and particularly partiality towards those who are on the margin. And it's the call out of the biblical tradition for there to be liberation of the oppressed, that the enslaved will go free. Unfortunately, it is empire religion that avoids those themes and go to some other themes that they find in the system of really question the system that they exist in. But really, 90% of our biblical tradition questions these systems of oppression, questions these systems of folks being marginalized. I mean, you get Jesus saying crazy things like the first shall be last, the last shall be first. Right?
Oh my God.
That it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for the rich man to enter the gates of heaven. He lifts up Isaiah as his call to ministry, where he says, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me because God has anointed me to preach good news to the poor, recovery of sight to the blind, freedom for the oppressed, and to announce the acceptable year of the Lord." I mean, it's all liberation-oriented themes that exist in the biblical tradition. But unfortunately, I think that sometimes the corporate church and the empire church and the empire theology tries to continue to capture the theology so that the theology becomes something that it isn't.
Okay, so you said two key phrases right there. The empire church and the corporate church. What's the difference between the Church of Jesus Christ, the empire church, and the corporate church? Is there a difference? What do you mean?
There's a great difference. I mean, one thing is that Jesus was questioning the empire religion of his day and the corporate religion of his day, which was the temple. That's why he was doing what he was doing in the streets, in the neighborhoods, in the villages, on the forefronts among those who marginalized, turns over the money changers' tables, continues to attack the Pharisees of his days, the Sadducees, because he was really questioning and challenging what had become empire religion and corporate religion. In fact, it was a faith that where the chief priest, in fact, was appointed, was allowed to be appointed by the emperor of Rome, because in a sense, whoever became chief priest was the largest plantation owner, slaves.
Wow!
All the land was under their control, and so all the priests, in a sense, got a cut of all the action that was going on, including those who were selling sacrifices in the temple courtyards and dealing with the exchange of money. I mean, so there was a whole type of corporate engagement that was taking place in and around the temple, and of course, who Jesus was challenging that's why
So you mean to tell me there was all this corruption going on in the faith community back in the day before the faith community was actually a faith? With the faith community that we see now, you mean to tell me this corruption isn't new, Reverend Hagler?
Oh, it's not new at all. I mean, that's one of the things I think that is important, is that there's always a spirit that is born that challenges the status quo. And if you look at it, I mean, I always make the assertion that if Jesus was a Jew, and Jesus was a Jew, he was not practicing a Judaism that came out of the temple, but he was practicing a Judaism that came out of the poor communities and those who had been, in a sense, oppressed by both the Roman Empire and oppressed by the status quo. That's what made him authorities that were put in place by the Roman Empire. And so he doesn't die between two thieves either. He dies between two insurrectionists, and they were probably related to him in some form or fashion. But that's what the death was about, was dying because he was seen as a threat to the status quo and to the empire.
So it sounds to me like this whole idea of challenging the state, challenging empire, and being revolutionaries in order to dismantle empire. That's the model that Christ set for people of faith. Are you saying that that's what we Christians are supposed to be doing?
Well, that's part of what we're supposed to be doing. I mean, I think that we have reduced it to some marketplace stuff. Prosperity theology that just simply talks about money, and materialism, which is really against the grain of anything that we read in the gospel tradition. The whole tradition is basically a resistance to some form of oppression, whether it was oppression in Egypt, or oppression in Assyria, or oppression by Rome. Those are the periods in which the Bible represents, and it was people's response, the faithful's response to oppression. And it wasn't to resign oneself to being oppressed, but it was to employ the power of God to remove oneself from oppression, or to resist one that would come from that enslavement.
Wow. So let's talk about for a second the idea of resisting oppression. How do we get from resisting oppression as a biblical tradition and then having to deal with oppression within the communities of faith? Like, how can we resist oppression when we are having to resist oppression from the state, when we're having to deal with oppression in the form of repressive gender ideology that we have to deal with in the church? And like you said, resisting oppression in the Christian tradition is not about just accepting your fate, being prayerful and forgiving of your oppressors and obeying, but it's actually resisting in a very active sense oppression of the poor by the powerful. So how do we get from that to today in the faith community, people believing that all they have to do is pray and the Lord is going to fix everything?
Well, I think that's sort of a part of a superstitious theology, if I can put it that way. One of the things that has always been important, and I think this is directed to your community that is listening in, is the folks who have run away from the institution of the church or the institution of the faithful miss a very powerful point. That powerful point is that people organize spiritually even before emancipation. And some of the slave uprising came out of slave churches. And rather than just simply accept the dictates of the slave master and society around them, many of those rebellions were plotted in those slave churches. That's why they were so busy in many places outlawing black folks to worship together,
right?
Without supervision by white folks, because they had already experienced the Nat Turners, they had already experienced the Denmark Vesey that came out of the church. That was plotted in the church. I mean, all of those uprisings was clear. I mean, in fact, it said in many of the state legislatures, in like Alabama, Mississippi, Louisiana, that any Negro, as the language they use, any Negro, whether slave or free or mulatto, that called themselves a Christian minister, could be arrested and flogged.
Wow!
Because they were too afraid of what was taking place, because they said that if there's going to be any uprising, it was going to come from those slave preachers or those black preachers or those black institutions that were established. And and they were right, because when you look at it, what is the church? The church is a collection of people. We often think of the church as a building. The church is a collection of people that come together to seek an alternative vision of life and an alternative vision of the world, and to imagine what a new society can look like, and to go forth and affect it, to go forth and do it, because you're together. You're not owned by the government. You're not owned by the corporation, but you're owned by the people, and you are guided by a book that talks about justice and liberation over and over again, and right relationship to neighbor. And so in a sense, if we're not satisfied with where some churches are, we don't need to go to those churches, but go to the places where you have influence and say, and you can make a difference in many of those communions. I mean, one of the things that I deliberately came into, the denominations I came into, simply because the people in those churches were not just members, but they had a voice and a vote, and they could direct anything and everything within that church. And for me, that was the height of accountability, which is important if we're going to go forth in a spirit of liberation, that we got to have that accountability, that one is not set apart, but one is set in the midst of the people.
And I mean, that's important. That was important. It was also new to us, the congregational model, where the church, and this is what we do in our church, and I'm the moderator, so I kind of direct things. I still don't quite know what I'm doing, but I haven't run anybody out of the church yet, so I think that's a good thing. Haven't cussed in a meeting yet. That's a great thing.
What a good job.
But that was very new to me, where the members of the church vote on everything the church does. That so, you're not sitting there telling us what we are going to do. We have meetings, we present these ideas before the congregation discusses these ideas, and they vote on whether they want to carry forth these ideas or not. And that is the height of, well, that's what our democracy is supposed to look like, right?
Well, that's what it's supposed to look like. That's right. It's a long way from it, but it's supposed to look like that. Yeah, I mean, one of the things that's important in these types of movements is that if you have a collection of people who are reactionary, then that's what the church is.
Mm.
If you have a collection of people who are progressive, then that's what the church is.
Mm-hmm.
If you have you have a collection of people that are otherworldly, then that's what the church is. But there's always that struggle. There's always that struggle of how do we respond to the events and the things of the world. I mean, I'll give you a case in point. Martin Luther King was facing J.H. Jackson, who was head of the National Baptist Convention.
Mm-hmm.
And J.H. Jackson refused to have civil rights come into the convention. And in fact, the National Progressive Baptist Convention got started as a response to not allowing civil rights in the National Baptist Convention.
Wow.
So the progressives got started so that they could have a place where they could talk about civil rights, et cetera, et cetera. J.H. Jackson hated King so badly that when they changed the name of the street, South Park Boulevard, or in Chicago to Martin Luther King Boulevard, he changed the address of the church so that he would not have to have Martin Luther King on his letterhead.
That's some hate right there.
You had that struggle going on, but it was the struggle of somebody who would align themselves to the empire, someone who basically wanted to protect the empire at all costs, and saw and felt King as a troublemaker, coming along, stirring up stuff, having demonstrations, breaking the law.
That sounds familiar. That sounds really familiar, Reverend Hagler. So I told you that Abdus is, and I actually don't think I told you guys. The reason I'm flying solo tonight is because my producer and co-host Abdus Shahid Luqman is he has to work, so he's sitting in a truck right now waiting to get loaded, and he says hi, Reverend Hagler. He's on. So now let's shift what you just said about the way Reverend the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King, because let's not forget that he was a Baptist minister, but he also had a doctorate. He was a spiritual man, he was an educated man, but he was also a revolutionary man. So those things can coexist in one person's body, and people act as if they can't. So tell me how that manifests for you as a person who is spiritual, as a man who is educated, as you know, as they call education, as we call education in this system, and as someone who is revolutionary. What does that look like for you, like on a local level in politics in the city where we live in D.C.?
Well, let me go back for just a second, because one of the things is that King's almost hypothesis was, what if we actually lived out the tenets of the gospel? And that forced him to basically begin to challenge the system that exists in America, and continue to expand in that challenge to raise the question about the economic structure of the system. In fact, preaching a sermon on talking about the beggar on the road, beggar being encountered on the road to Jericho, and he says that the edifice that produces beggars need to be restructured. So that was the sermon.
That sounds like capitalism to me.
Right. His sermon talked about what does it mean to fling a few coins at a beggar at the side of the road, when in fact it was the whole structure that created the beggar in the first place, and therefore needed to be transformed.
Wow.
And so that's again sort of like what it means to really and truly do some theologizing from the scriptures. And so when I look at Washington, D.C., I mean, obviously in Washington, D.C., we were on a serious plantation. Most of us really don't understand or see that we're on a plantation. We've been given limited home rule by Congress that could take it back at any time. Everything is reviewed by Congress. Even whatever laws that are passed here at the local level are not really passed. In a sense, they're really offered to Congress in such a way that we say, can we enact that, boss? Can we do that this year? Right? And we don't have the guts to challenge them. When you look at sort of like who our city council members are, our city council members, by and large, are overseers on that plantation. Such as we passed recently at the ballot as a ballot initiative, Initiative 77. And the city council, after it was passed by the people, proceeded to overturn it, to repeal it. Basically saying, oh, it's bad laws. I mean, I think the mayor said, well, sometimes the council makes bad decisions and we have to correct it. Sometimes the people make bad decisions and we have to correct it. But, you know, it's a clear self-serving model because when you look at it, everybody who voted against it was on the tape. And I'll put it that way, you know, you got Vince Gray that got the big, I think $34,000. Mickelson got $30,000. All of them had hand in the cookie jar. And it's really a sad statement in this era of voter suppression all across the country and the attempts to keep black folks and people of color from the polls, that you have every single black city councilor in the city, with the exception of one, Robert White, who voted to overturn the vote. And so it's really, in a sense, a sin that people are that ahistorical, or really not only ahistorical, but are in the pockets of corporate interest, that they will really sell out the people and their decisions in an instant if it's not convenient to those benefactors, those contributors, those corporations, or basically the Congress of the United States.
I mean, and that sounds exactly like the kind of fight that people are having, progressives are having, with the current political climate, especially the focus on the Democratic National Committee, the DNC in particular. But also, it's also true of the RNC that votes of people are not respected. And when we see this on a national level, I think we get more excited about it because we think it's the most important thing, but we forget the importance of legislation that happens at the state level and at the city level, and it's important to focus on these issues at these levels too. Uh-oh, looks like somebody wants to play with me. I am not going to keep him long, I promise. So you got involved in this fight. Our church got involved in this fight. We got involved in this fight, not just because we are citizens of the District of Columbia, and our vote should count, but also because of this revolutionary focused faith that we have, that we do not allow the oppression of the state, the repression of the empire to stand when we are supposed to defend the people against those kinds of things. So what do you see in the future no, let me take that back. Here's a question I want to know, because people are really upset about people in the faith community getting involved in politics. My question is, should people in the faith community get involved in politics? Should churches be involved in politics at all?
Well, the reality is churches are. Unfortunately, the most pronounced voices have been on the right, talking about some of the most reprehensible things in social policy and in human discord that one can think of, like always trying to put women back to a place of silence, wanting to put black folks back in slavery, wanting to make sure that the jails are full, I mean, all that type of stuff. Where the reality is where Jesus would be the one who would be challenging those things, would be talking about the liberation of women, that the captives should go free, would be talking about those who are on the margins, and would say, because we are believers, we have to be people who respond to the world with an alternative vision of what could be, what should be. Like, for example, to take a radical point of view, to say that no human being is illegal. I don't care what any government has to say. No human being is illegal. And to sort of go to some extremes that people may think are radical, but are not really radical at all, because it really talks about this creation being created by a creator, and the human beings on it being created by that same creator. And all of us being able to share the bounty of this earth, and not some people being able to hoard the valuable resources of this earth, or commoditize things that other people should have a right to, like water, like clean air, all of those other types of things that people should have free access to. That's what we're struggling against, and that's what we're trying to continue to lift up, this alternative vision of what the world should become.
So, in wrapping this up, I really appreciate the model that you have provided for us, and we know that you're going to say, well, no, it's not me, I'm following Jesus. We know that, we absolutely know that, so you don't have to say it, because I know you're going to say it. But for people who tend to, and I was certainly guilty of it myself for a very long time, to make Jesus an otherworldly, mystical kind of, untouchable, unrelatable image. He was an icon, nothing more than a spiritual icon. We got the message that we're supposed to be the hands and feet of Jesus, but so rarely did we actually see what that meant in our churches. And I know I can speak for Abdul Shahid and myself, and hopefully for a lot of people who are watching, that Jesus was not this person who went around just crossing people and blessing them, and and throwing out esoteric advice that did not apply to not only people's lives, but he was not removed from the struggle for equality and justice for people. And it is, I think, refreshing to see a man of faith who embodies that vision of, yep, I'm a pastor, I'm a senior pastor, I could stand in this pulpit and ask for your money, but I would rather be out in the streets fighting for what Jesus told me to fight for. And we appreciate that very, very much. And we've certainly appreciated the latitude you've given us to be just as radical as we want to be, and to just allow us to go along and strive along in this struggle, because it is really an honor.
That's the important thing, is for people to bring who they are into the household of faith, particularly from a revolutionary point of view. Bring your progressive selves into community of faith, and as it says, do not be conformed to this world. That's what we're right. You're reminded, but be transformed. Be transformed.
Absolutely.
We got to deal with that type of spirit, but we got to bring some newness into it, some real power into it, particularly right now, when you have the captivity of the church being controlled by a white supremacist and all over this country. And so we need to have a church that rises up and is not just a liberal church, but is a revolutionary progressive church that is talking about the issues in the way that it needs to talk about the issues, and people are doing what they need to do to change the world.
Thank you so much, Reverend Hagler. We really appreciate you coming on. You all, this will not be the last time we have our pastor on this show, because, this isn't going to be the last time we're up to something. So we'll definitely be with have Reverend Hagler with us again. We'll keep you posted of all the stuff we do that is social and racially justice focused in our church. And once again, Rev, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate your time. You go ahead and enjoy the rest of your evening, because we got some other stuff to talk about that might involve some cursing, and I don't want you to be witness to that. So
take care.
Good night.
Good night.
So y'all, I really hope that the audio was tolerable. We always got to figure out what's going on with our tech here, but we really wanted you to understand, our progressive friends. We really wanted you to understand, and we always do want you to understand, that we're not those kinds of Christians, right? People look at Christians today and they see Jerry Falwell, and they see Mike Huckabee and Mike Pence, and is that man's name? Mike Pence, whatever his name. Pence, they see these black pastors who went to the White House to meet with 45, and as my husband says, who 45 got out the old family Bible, blew the dust off, because he's never actually opened it. blew the dust off, showed them the old family Bible to impress them. And then, they went in there not demanding anything from him for their people, but they just wanted his ear. They wanted access to him, and he passed out the cheese and the wine, and they enjoyed themselves at our expense. I call those people Christians in name only. Chinos. That's my nickname for them. Just like the Republicans had their nickname for the Republicans in name only, the rhinos, and I think the Democrats have that for the Democrats, the dinos, Democrats in name only. Well, I call these people Chinos. They are Christians in name only because they are not Christians indeed. They do not live the message of Jesus Christ. And truth be told, no Christian really lives and gets it all right. None of us gets it all right. Every single one of us falls short of not just the glory of God, but we fall short of the mandate of God. We're just like your children. We misbehave and do what we feel like sometimes. But if we are serious about who Jesus is and what his message is, then our mandate is to serve other people and to fight on behalf of the oppressed. That's what it actually says in the Bible. The Bible says that we Christians, we believers in Jesus, the Christ, are supposed to fight for justice on behalf of the oppressed. And if we're not doing that for all of the oppressed people, not just in the nation, not just people who are oppressed because of this current president, not just people who we believe are oppressed in the womb. There's no such thing. There's some made up stuff. But if we are not fighting on behalf of the poor, if we're not fighting on behalf of the oppressed people that this government has always oppressed, then we're not doing our job as Christians. We're not living out the mandate of Jesus Christ. If we believe that women are supposed to occupy this narrow, little, quiet, subservient role that we think is in the Bible, we don't understand what Jesus did when he spoke to that woman at the well. We don't understand the freedom that he expressed and the equality that he mandated when he gave the woman at the well the good news of the gospel to take to her town. Not only that, God gave the women who found the tomb empty the good news of the resurrection. That was not just happenstance. That was God. That was Jesus letting the world know, I see no gender. There's no hierarchy in gender. A woman can carry my message just as well and just as powerfully as a man can. So there's a whole lot that we could get into about the actual gospel of Jesus Christ. We're not going to do that tonight, but I really did want you to have a really good idea of where we get our faith from, where we get our marching orders as far as our spirituality is concerned, and who we get that inspiration from, who's walking this earth. And our pastor, Reverend Hagler, is one of those people. So switching gears, hey Lynn, I'm going to say hi to folks who are on Facebook. Hey, I hope that you are able to hear us okay. I understand we're having audio issues. So let's talk really quickly about Kanye West, shall we? Kanye did basically what those pastors did when they went to meet with Trump. But only Kanye performed for a different group of people. Make no mistake, those pastors, those black pastors who went to meet with Trump, they performed too. They were a bunch of minstrel acts too. They performed the holy spiritual, oh, we're loving everyone. This is the mandate of God to just love everybody regardless of how horribly they treat you and how horribly they disrespect you. God does not mandate any of us to kiss anybody's behind for some favor. That's not in the book. But that's what these pastors did. So they put on a minstrel act for their congregation so they could justify their personal support of this person, because they don't understand politics. They don't handle politics, and they sure don't handle black politics. They're not involved in politics. I guarantee you these people were not involved in anybody's politics before this man was elected to office. So they performed a little spiritual minstrel show. Just like Kanye West performed a minstrel show when he was in the White House last week. And it's unfortunate because I do believe Kanye suffers from some serious mental health issues. Most black people who have been following his career have known that about him for some time. I mean, that's not like some new mean thing we're saying about him. Kanye has suffered from some mental health issues for a while. And he, like a lot of celebrities, I think he's not surrounded by people who really care for him to encourage him to get the help that he really desperately needs. We know that if you followed his career, he began to exhibit a lot of unstable and questionable behavior when his mom died. And I completely understand that. Having that close a relationship with a person who believed in you the most. Oh, I understand that. And that person suddenly being gone very early in your life. Completely understand that. But when somebody like Kanye West is surrounded by or is mentored by people like Jim Brown, and I think on Thursday night we're going to talk about this a little bit more, because I really want to make sure you get Abda Shahid's view on this, because he's got some really, really excellent commentary on this issue. But Jim Brown was basically the house Negro who was sitting there overseeing Kanye buck dancing for not for 45, but for the media and 45's followers. See, this is why Trump didn't say anything. This is why he didn't have anything to say during Kanye's bizarre, far-ranging, weird, otherworldly, with a few really salient points sprinkled in the middle of all of that mess. This is why Trump didn't say anything. Because he didn't benefit at all from sitting there talking to Kanye. He didn't get any. But his followers, his supporters, got to see through all of that media capturing this black man, this young black man sitting there saying these exultatory things about Trump. And how the baseball cap made Kanye, putting on the baseball cap made him feel like Superman. What an insult to that man's mother, to Kanye's mother. And his father. How Trump is our president, so he needs to have the flyest everything. Then he talks about alternate universes. Then he talks about some other things. And he throws in some good ideas. He does bring up the fact that stop and frisk is not what's needed in Chicago. That jobs are what's needed in Chicago and in the black neighborhoods altogether. And in America altogether, the fact that we don't make anything anymore, and we used to. Now everything is made overseas. It's interesting, though, that Kanye brought that up, but he didn't take his cap off and look at the tag inside his cap that more than likely said made in China. It's unfortunate that someone who was used by this president, who is a master media manipulator. Please don't stop thinking that Trump is stupid. He may not be articulate. He may not be intelligent, but he's sly as a fox. He's crafty. He understood the media attention that he would get from having Kanye West in his office. And he understands that Kanye does not understand politics. He barely understands a lot of the ins and outs of politics himself. But he understands that Kanye understands even less than he does. He knows that Kanye has had some issues. And as much as Donald Trump is on Twitter, he's seen some of Kanye's not so coherent tweets. So Kanye being in the White House was absolutely nothing more than Trump manipulating Kanye West's thirst to be close to a white man of power and Jim Brown's thirst for relevance by aligning himself with this particularly horrible white man of power. Donald Trump used those two men to get himself some more media exposure and to get himself some more cool points with his base. Because see, now his base can point to what Kanye said about Trump and say that, see, black people have everything to gain. I mean, Kanye loves Trump, so what could possibly be wrong with him that black people don't like? Ignoring all of the bad policy, ignoring all of the racist comments. They have Kanye now to point to. First they just had Candace Owens. Now they've got Candace and Kanye. And a couple of other black Republicans who are staunchly pro-Trump. Oh, that's right, Ben Carson. But he stays quiet because he's involved in some scandals. So now Trump's supporters have another black person who speaks to the millennial generation now. Who speaks to a whole nother generation of people who they can point to and say, see, he likes Trump. If Kanye likes Trump, he must not be so bad. And Kanye has done Trump's work on the campaign trail in regard to speaking to black issues for him. It doesn't matter that Kanye doesn't actually know anything about black issues. It doesn't matter that he can't articulate those issues. It doesn't matter that Kanye didn't actually vote for Trump or anybody else. The only thing that matters is that Kanye West was used by the master media manipulator Donald Trump. And Kanye doesn't even realize that he was turned into a minstrel show for the benefit of this man's political gain for the next 4 years. And Jim Brown should be ashamed of himself, but he's not. He's not, because he's one of those pandering Negroes who thinks that because he has some money that racism doesn't affect him. So, I mean, this is the danger of the celebrity worship that we focus on in America, but it's particularly dangerous for the celebrity worship that black people are invested in, and especially those of us who aren't politically inclined, that we get all of our information from entertainment media and from entertainment icons. I like a lot of Kanye's old stuff too, but he does not dictate my politics. He does not inform my politics. Politics informs my politics. History informs my politics. And unless you understand those things, unless you have a basic understanding of those things, and you are willing and open to learn more about history and politics and racism and white supremacy and systemic discrimination and how they all fit together to put us right where we are on the precipice of social, political, and economic irrelevance, then you can't speak to anything important in the White House. All you're doing is going there for a photo op. And the photo op isn't even for you. It isn't even for your benefit. It's for the benefit of the person who's sitting behind the desk laughing at you in the Oval Office. And unfortunately, that's the situation. That's the position that Kanye West found himself in. Even though a whole lot of white people who support Trump don't believe it, don't believe that. They don't see it that way. A whole lot of black people, too, have been able to pick out the few slightly coherent things that Kanye has said and say, no, he knew what he was talking about. No, he had a few ideas of an inkling of some things that were right, but he could not connect them to the policies that make those issues problems. And he couldn't put forth policy ideas. He could not sit there and say, this is a problem, so, Mr. President, we would like for you to do this to solve this problem. If you have an audience with the President of the United States, that's what you do. And it's also interesting, as I wrap this up, that when Common went to the White House, and I forget the context of that, I think it was for an arts, a focus on the arts, there was no media frenzy when Common went to the White House during this administration. There was no... But you know why? Because Common wasn't sitting there buck dancing for this dude. Or anybody else for that matter. And I'm not even that big of a Common fan. I'm just not. I'm sorry. So the master media manipulator knew who he could manipulate to get the desired effect that he was looking for in regard to black people. It'll be interesting to see what Trump actually does in regard to the coherent things that Kanye West actually said. I don't imagine that he's going to do anything. He's going to do the exact same thing that he has been doing about actual issues that black people face. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. What he's going to do is this window dressing symbolic stuff, like declaring Martin Luther King Jr.'s birthplace a national park. A national historic park now. It's not just a historic place. It's a whole national historic park. Well, yay! How much money does that put in black people's pockets? How does that close the racial wealth gap? How does that address the educational attainment gap that is based in systemic racism? How does that address 50% of black college graduates being unemployed, as opposed to less than 20% of white college graduates being unemployed? How does Martin Luther King Jr.'s home being a national park address black boys who are even born to wealthy families disproportionately ending up in poverty in adulthood? How does that address mass incarceration? How does that address black women being overwhelmingly targeted for eviction as a byproduct of mass incarceration that has removed 1.5 million black men from our community? How does, I mean, it's nice, it's a gesture, but that's all it is. And as long as you don't understand politics, as long as you don't get the importance of politics and policies, this is all we're going to continue to get. So the Kanye Wests of the world are going to continue to buck dance in front of presidents, not just this one, but a whole bunch of presidents. And we're still going to get symbolic, meaningless gestures that do not speak to the economic and the political realities that we face. So we're going to have to continue to do this work on the ground that we know people are out there doing right now in the midterms, in these midterm elections in these states that are absolutely critical. So thank you all very much for joining us tonight on a special edition of Live in Coffee, Current Events and Politics in Luqman Nation, the most dangerous show on the internet. If you like the content you see here on Luqman Nation, please consider becoming a patron and supporting us with monthly contributions. And if you can't do monthly contributions, that's fine. We understand. Consider a one-time donation to Luqman Nation. You can support us through Patreon or through GoFundMe, and you can find us on both of those platforms searching under Luqman Nation, LuqManNation. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Facebook, share this and all of our other videos and content, and tune in to us live on our regular broadcast on Thursday night, 9 p.m. As always, everybody, be really good to each other. Peace.